This video was brought to you in part by the supporters of the AMTV Patreon. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the Ident Review Extra, the spin-off show that takes a look at one individual ident each episode and gives it the review it deserves. And this time around, we're embarking on a journey through the ITV Network and all the different regional stations that comprise it. We move to the top of the country now to tune into Scottish television. Launching on the 31st of August 1957, Scottish Television was the 7th station to launch as part of the ITV Network, and the first in the region of Scotland, giving viewers there a taste of the commercial programming that ITV had to offer. Serving mainly central Scotland, the only other major competitor that STV would have would be Grampian, which began airing in 1961 and primarily broadcast in the northern areas of Scotland. And don't worry, we'll cover Grampian in due course. Back at STV, in terms of a visual identity, like many channels back in the 50s and 60s, the main ident that was presented to viewers was fairly simple in both appearance and in construct. Things seemed to remain simple as STV transitioned to colour, with it being the mid-1980s that would bring about some real complexity to its visual identity. So let's take a look at a few of the idents that STV had showcased to its viewers over the many decades for when it was on the air.
The Spirit, when you'll be meeting his new co-presenter Shona Campbell. But now, let's meet the Macintosh Man.
You're watching Scottish Nighttime.
Well, the Scots knew how to present themselves. As mentioned, the first ident, which was introduced in 1965, is rather simple. Simple can work though, as we've seen many a time, and in terms of getting across the station's identity, I think this does the job. We see a lion spin around or zoom in depending on the sequence, settling with a box with the station's name emblazoned across the top and bottom. Whilst in terms of animation it doesn't have a great deal going for it, in terms of a final image and a lasting logo, it could be classed as one of the most iconic and recognisable of the ITV network at this time. With the introduction of colour, the Lion Ident would last for little over a year, before being swapped out by a new design, ditching the full name and abbreviating itself to simply STV, a phrase which viewers would commonly refer to the channel before they picked it back up for themselves in the 21st century. Like the monochrome variant, the first STV ident doesn't necessarily have much going on. We see an outline version of the logo fall into the solid rendition before it settles amongst a nice bit of fanfare. The font used for STV may scream 1970s, but it remains a look that many would grow familiar with. In fact, this ident, and variations of it, would continue to be used all the way up until 1985. 15 years for one concept is pretty impressive, and certainly one of the longest running that we've covered. The mid-1980s, of course, was a time for change in the TV world, no less with the acceptance and use of new computer technology. Idents were often a good testing ground for this new tech, with Channel 4 being the trailblazers in 1982, before their various competitors followed suit shortly afterward. The STV take on the new tech would be a 3D Thistle, a part of nature associated heavily with Scotland. It may look a bit basic by today's standards, but like many other TV channels back then, I'm sure this would have been seen as cutting edge, although there isn't a great deal of movement involved compared to, say, the variant seen on Channel 4 or even other ITV network stations. Nevertheless, despite its blockiness, I really like the Thistle design here. The colours blend well, and it once again delivers a logo that will become instantly recognisable for the millions tuning in. The STV moniker was also dropped at this time, with the full name of Scottish Television being permanently reinstated, although several viewers would still informally refer to the channel as STV for decades to come. As the 80s closed off and the 90s rolled in, the Thistle logo would be retained on Scottish, with slight alterations along the way. The 3D look of the original 85 logo was gradually dropped for a more 2D, or at least less defined looking logo, which in some cases would lose the different colours, with the whole thing being uniform in its appearance. In the late 90s, when ITV was introducing a standard logo for all of its stations, Scotland was one of the few to refuse this, and drop the Thistle for a more standard and quite frankly dull look, one that would reflect what ITV was doing across the network whilst retaining the Scottish name. Today, the channel is now officially known as STV once again, with many of its idents showcasing that moniker. Merging with the Grampian station under the brand name of STV, the channel now serves all of Scotland, continuing to bring ITV programmes that people enjoy, as well as a great selection of regional shows that Scottish viewers enjoy in their droves. The channel has served vast parts of Scotland for over 60 years, and in that time was not only able to gain the attention of millions in their region, but was also able to carve out a visual identity for itself that it didn't have to change all that often. But arguably, they didn't need to. Their early efforts were simple, but very memorable. Their more advanced offerings in the 80s and 90s reflected contemporary standards of the time, but managed to maintain that sense of impact in terms of how striking their sequences could be. And whether you're a fan of their current idents or you have a passion for the classics, one thing's for sure, the STV, or Scottish television if you like, will continue to serve and entertain the Scots for many years to come. And so that brings us to the end of another episode of the Ident Review Extra. If you enjoyed this look back at the Scottish side of ITV, then please leave a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to the channel for lots more ident related content. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Well, that does bring us to the end of another day here on AMTV. We do hope you enjoyed the programme, and a special thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and to everyone who's tuned in. Until the next broadcast, we wish you a good night.